most evil practice of all time? I mean, the way that it was branded was like, this is terrible,
conversion
I never do
therapy.
it. So first off, what is conversion therapy and why is the Supreme Court taking up something regarding it?
So the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Chiles v. Salazar. Licensed counselor Kaylee Chiles from Colorado is contesting her state's law that bans conversion therapy. This law goes back to 2019, and it bans conversion therapy for minors. Broadly, it forbids all counselors from seeking to change or reduce same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria. So that's the really important key here. It's going to come back. Chiles is represented by Alliance Defending Freedom. She says that the law violates her First Amendment free speech rights. Now, Colorado came back at her, and they're saying that the ban is not about free speech. It's about professional conduct to protect LGBTQ plus IA youth from practices deemed harmful by the medical establishment and ineffective. And in fact, yes, back in the Obama years, we had the APA, the AMA, the psych, all of the major institutions saying conversion therapy is harmful. And professional conduct, of course, is a legal category that states can regulate. It's not protected by the First Amendment. Oral arguments were a trip yesterday. I got to listen to some of them. Those of you who have watched for a while, you know I love watching this stuff. They indicate, of course, a majority of the justices think the Colorado law is actually in violation of the First Amendment. And this could be a massive ruling because right now we have 20 states that ban conversion therapy along the same lines as Colorado. So this would have widespread implications. Little play-by-play, Justice Sotomayor, one of my favorites, suggested that there's no imminent threat. So Chiles, the counselor, doesn't have standing because no one's actually going after her. And Colorado says, well, we have this law, but we're not going to enforce it. Obviously, Chiles is actually under active investigation by the state right now. So that went out the window. Justice Jackson suggested that maybe the First Amendment is about conveying messages, and this isn't conveying messages. But Barrett and Gorsuch were very solid, very good, very, very targeted, asking about strict scrutiny, First Amendment protecting professionals, and talking about how what Colorado has actually done with this law is dictate what speech professionals are allowed to make. So it's actually saying that you can only say these certain things if you are this particular type of medical practitioner. You're not allowed to say these other things. Justice Clarence Thomas questioned the historical basis for regulating mental health professionals' speech separately from medicine. And Alito did my favorite moment of the day. He asked the Colorado lawyer, he was like, wouldn't you say that ideology has influenced medicine and medical laws in the past? And the Colorado lawyer's like, well, I guess it's possible. And then Alito went on to list all of these cases, like sterilizing people with developmental disabilities, institutionalizing people with Down syndrome, and emphasizing that the First Amendment plays a really important role in protecting dissenting voices from the medical establishment, and which eventually those voices allow for actual science to be applied to the question. The Colorado state attorney would not acknowledge the points that Alito was making. So
nothing like the most radicalizing event of my life and probably ever will be COVID, right?
Yeah,
because I distinctly remember
right.
that dissenting
Silencing
voices turned out
dissent.
to be completely correct on everything.
Yeah. And it turns out that when it comes to so-called gender-affirming care, dissenting voices are really important right now.
Yep.
They also noted that Colorado's law is asymmetrical because it permits counseling. It permits counselors, talk therapists to affirm gender dysphoria and say, you're right, you're in the wrong body without parental consent. But it bars counselors who are seeking to help children who want to realign with their biological sex from encouraging them to do so. So it's a very asymmetrical law. So it looks like the ruling is going to go in favor of free speech, First Amendment rights, because we have amazing justices. But this brought up the question, okay, how did we get to this point? What is conversion therapy? And what should it even be allowed, right? So I did some research into conversion therapy. And we're talking about, I'm going to frame it as an issue of concept creep in psychology, coupled with the classic bait and switch attack. So what happened is the Colorado law includes measures as extreme as electric shock and removing parts of the brain, right? You think of cutting out the front of the line.
We did used to lobotomize people. I don't think for being gay, but that used to be actual standard medical science.
So this law includes extreme measures like that actually are physically harmful.
Yeah.
And talk therapy, where a child experiencing gender dysphoria is like helped to align their feelings again with their body. So it's a very broad category. And the concept creep is that throughout the Obama administration years, as the campaign to be 100% affirming, quote unquote, of any kind of sexuality, any kind of gender identity, they just kept adding in practices to the category of conversion therapy until it was so broad.
Which is genius, by
It's
the way.
almost
Because
it is.
now if you support
Now
it,
it's
you
illegal.
support lobotomizing people, right?
Exactly.
Genius.
You are a fascist. And it's just that. Also, the bait and switch of identifying this as like, okay, pray the gay away is how they would have said it in the 90s when I was growing up. Like, okay, you're attracted to other men. We're just going to like pray over you and convert you and maybe shock you, and eventually you'll like women, which is sort of crazy, right?
Yeah.
But then they added in also children who think that they're in the wrong body into the same category, which of course gets the LGB community all up in arms because you added in the T. So it's very, very classic. Efforts to ban it started under Obama. They start redefining these terms. The AMA condemned conversion therapy. And in 2018, the American Academy of Pediatrics, when it came to children, published a policy arguing that conversion therapy to, quote, change a youth's gender expression or identity is not only unsuccessful, but also deleterious. So here's where the other concept creep came in. They redefined harm to be physical, irreversible harm to a child's body to just be anything that was emotionally uncomfortable to the child. And so basically what it was then used by the AAP, so American Academy of Pediatrics, this statement asserted that anything other than affirming gender identity was dangerous to trans youth, meaning emotionally maybe harmful or uncomfortable, that not socially transitioning a child or pushing back on the idea that transitioning would lead to greater happiness was akin to abuse. So they also redefine abuse now. The term conversion therapy was then deployed to remove all checks and balances on gender affirming care. Since then, since 2018, the field exploded and of course is now $1 billion industry globally. So it was kind of amazing to walk back through what I would call now the demonization of conversion therapy, to this expansion of terms, expansion of meaning, until you could disavow anything that would go against the LGBTQ accepted agenda in medicine.
Sorry, can I stop you for a second, because I was just reading through Father James Martin's response on this, which we'll get to. But so was the term conversion therapy not even coined by people doing the work of like providing therapy to people it was coined by opposition? So
it's hard to say. I was actually looking into that because you start to see it, you see it pop up during the Obama years as a negative term, right? As a negative thing. It was hard to say when it started to be used at all. So it could have been that in the 90s when we're talking about like pray the gay away, that it was like, okay, we're going to do therapy that's going to help convert people or change your sexual attraction or your predilections when it comes to sex. When it became a term of a bad term, like something to be taken out and legally forbidden, then that was definitely during the Obama years.
Okay. And before we get into Father James Martin's response to this, Courage Ministries, like if there's anyone in our audience right now that's really struggling with this, because I think what's unfortunate
or have children who are struggling, right?
Yeah, I think what's unfortunate in all of this is this still is an area where people actually need really good, solid pastoral advice on like a heartbreaking issue. Like if you are dealing with same-sex attraction for whatever reason, and like
or gender dysphoria,
like all these things, that's what I think makes me so angry about Father James Martin is he knows what he's doing and he's actually leading people away from what should be good pastoral care in a sane society. So Courage Ministries, go check them out. They're fantastic. I think the new bishop in Oregon was Thomas something. I forget his name. Yeah, Sample. Yeah. Worked with them, and so I maybe just to like even wrap this entire conversation with like these are debates about the First Amendment here, but at its core, like on the human level, this is something that people need really good, solid pastoral advice that will lead them towards human flourishing and a good relationship in the church community or just in society in general. So
and parents need to be able to request help for their struggling children, which is what the Colorado law basically forbids. That even if you're a parent and your child had, say there was some horrible abuse incident, a lot of kids who experience gender dysphoria or even same-sex attraction later in life have some kind of abuse in their childhood. What the Colorado law is saying is if your child comes out of some traumatic experience like that and they are now just confused about their bodies and what they mean and they're uncomfortable in their bodies, parents are not allowed to seek help that would help heal that wound, because now it's only forward. Like, we are going to glorify their victimhood. We're going to tell them they're now identified permanently with their victimhood. And if you as a parent want to help them heal, you're actually abusing your child. That's the evil of these laws in Colorado and in the 19 other states that have these laws in place. So it's and the work of organizations like Courage is aimed at adult populations. So we're not talking about kids, but the principle remains.
Absolutely.
And
even, okay, so even to wrap this all back up, because
wrap it in, Bo.
The guy Noah, who, like, I didn't even read his public Reddit activity because it's so like depraved, and like honestly my like heart breaks a little bit for people that, so like, could you imagine you're in the situation where, you know, your child falls into something like this, or maybe you yourself fall into something like this, and like you are alone, isolated, depressed, doing things that harm your body, harm your spirit, harm your will. I mean, like the stuff that he was saying was like, it's almost hard for me to imagine how you could possibly get to that place of such levels of extreme sexual abuse to yourself or to others. Right. But people are there. Like there's really predatory forces out there that are
100%.
Pushing you towards this, as this is somehow a liberation.
Well, and that's
for
the
you
flip
or yourself,
side.
you know?
That's the flip side of the Colorado law, is that it silences all voices that say, you know what, there is healing for this. And it props up. So if someone like Rothke as a child, his parents did bring him to a therapist, the only therapists who would be legally practicing in Colorado would be the ones who are going to pathologize his everyday experience, who are going to say, you are a victim, you are this way, there is no healing, and you're going to continue down this road. It's inevitable. So let's just affirm you all the way down until you're out there assassinating Supreme Court justices. Like that's what the law is doing on the aggressive, predatory side that you're describing.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is the end of it all. But yes, Father James Martin then comes out with this unbelievable, well, actually it's completely believable.
It's completely believable, yeah.
But these are the voices that you're hearing from America Magazine and Outreach. He says, a few thoughts about the SCOTUS arguments today. Of course, conversion therapy should be banned. And this, of course, it is so sloppy, because I think everyone can agree that we shouldn't be electrocuting people or lobotomizing people because they're confused sexually. But he's lumping it in with this woman who has never done any of those things, who just sits and talks to kids and their parents. To begin with, he says, it's been rejected by almost every reputable psychiatric and psychological organization. Again, all the same people who are telling us that gender-affirming care is reversible, that Lupron is fine to give to kids, that, the COVID vaccine completely prevented the spread of the disease. So he's just
it's a sidestep. Yeah.
It's like COVID never happened for him. And then he just goes on and on about, I've worked with people who said conversion therapy is bad. And so this show, yeah.
I also get frustrated too with, so he said, for straight people who don't think it's a good idea or even not a bad idea, for straight people who think it's a good idea or not, or even not a bad idea, I often say, do you think there's any amount of therapy that can make you gay? Yes. Absolutely. Yes. I think that if you were to show something, like, especially
it's called grooming.
Right. It's called grooming. It happens all the time. And yes, if you had aggressive therapists that wanted to push you in a certain direction and emotionally manipulate you into making acts like that, yes, I've seen it. There's documented examples.
Why do you think, Father James Martin, 40% of students at Brown University identify as gender nonconforming? What do you think that's natural? God made 40% of the kids at Brown that way?
It's heads I win, tails you lose, right? Because at one point they're saying, I remember back in the day, I don't even think this is really a core argument anymore. It's like, you were born that way, right? Like that was even like Lady Gaga had that song, like Born This Way or whatever. Born this way. And everyone's like, well, you can't say anything because people were born this way. But of course, now you get the manifestation of this extreme LGBTQ ideology where they said, no, actually, no one's given anything at birth. You can change. You can go that way. You can come back. You could be a man. You could be a woman. It's all up to you, and it could change all the time.
Defying gravity.
So it's like you can't have it both ways. And then if you're like, conversion therapy, maybe an element of that would be proper counseling to have someone to be comfortable in their own body, or maybe to have like positive sexuality and rediscover what that means, like in the confines of natural law and what God prescribes for you. No, because they were born that way, right? But it's like you can't have it both ways. They're trying to have it both ways, and I think it's fundamentally destructive to the human person and predatory, because like we have good organizations coming out and they get attacked on all these same grounds, by the way, for again, prescribing like God's natural plan for man and woman in a way that you would be unified and procreative. And it's like, it's just so sad. I guess it just really makes me angry because I see how predatory and vindictive. There's a whole cottage industry on this now. And I just don't think it makes anyone happier. I don't think it makes it's not good for anyone. It's not happy for anyone at the end of the day. So